The neon lights of Jeannie's Lamp Arcade flickered against the darkness of the night like ghostly phantoms trapped in a kaleidoscope. I always thought the sign was spelt wrong, but it was a play on words apparently because the owner's name was Mr. Geen. I never met him to ask, though. It was 1985, a time when the sounds of pinball machines and electronic beeps would draw children into a world where time lost all meaning. I was among them, a wiry 11-year-old, full of energy and a thirst for competition. My twin brother Ben, our friends and I would compete with each other, playing for who pays for the next game or round of snacks. We were basically addicted to the lights and games, projected against screens that were just too bright for the gloom that settled outside. The air inside the Genie's lamp was thick with the smell of buttered popcorn and stale soda, but beneath that was something else, a peculiar dampness, a chill that seemed to cling to the walls where faded posters of 80s iconography hung crookedly. I'd heard local gossip about the arcade being haunted and stories of kids who went missing during the late hours. They whispered of strange noises echoing from the dark corners where the machines stood silent. But I didn't think much of it. It sounded like just another urban legend that every town has. Besides, fear was a foreign concept in a place that offered endless fun, or so I believed. That particular Friday night, I was in the midst of a fierce competition with Ben and my best friend Claudia. We had just conquered another level on Gauntlet, and our laughter filled the air as we high-fived each other, the sound mingling with the blaring music from the surrounding games. "Let's try the one at the back," Claudia suggested, casually tossing her long braid over her shoulder. "I hear that game is really scary." I'd never really paid attention to that section of the arcade, mainly because it seemed like a neglected part and therefore boring. The machines there never had anybody playing them, and the lights seemed to be dimmer and flickered occasionally. Her words, bubbling with excitement, called to the daredevil in me. I always loved a good scare. We moved toward the back, though as we got closer, I had a nagging sensation creeping in. The lights were dimmer, and the sounds of buzzing and beeping faded to a distant hum. "Is it even on?" Ben asked, squinting into the shadows where the machine stood. The name, The Collector, barely illuminated against the backdrop of the dim atmosphere. It was old, far older than any of the other machines. The cabinet appeared worn, rifled with scratches, but the screen flickered to life as soon as Claudia put in her quarter, revealing a labyrinth filled with danger. "Come on, let's play," Claudia insisted, already pressing the start button. I hesitated. Something felt off. I watched the screen, a figure moving in pixelated form through narrow passages, representing the kids I had once seen racing through the arcade, their laughter ringing high through the air. I'd learned early on that games often reflected levels of respect or fear within reality, and as I watched the poorly animated character evade a shadowy figure, I felt a seemingly irrational fear creeping up the back of my neck. Our adventures in the Collector began. The first few rounds were just typical gameplay, traversing mazes, dodging the bad guy, and being cheered on by a crowd of virtual pixelated children between sections. But as we progressed, the visuals grew darker, and the soundtrack morphed into an unnerving tune of chimes and distorted whispers. The innocent laughter of the virtual crowd had faded into those echoes. I could swear I could hear their voices, trembling as if they begged for help. When I realized, it felt like I had snapped out of a trance. "Are you guys hearing this?" I exclaimed, my voice shaky. Ben and Claudia nodded but looked intent on the screen, glued to its hypnotic flickering. The character on screen began to change as I looked back at it, morphing into something far more grotesque, its once cheerful grin now twisted into a mocking smirk. Suddenly, as the sinister pursuing character caught up to Claudia's character, the screen jolted, shattering the atmosphere like glass. An image of the pixelated crowd flashed across the display, only, for a split second, it was a lot less pixelated. The flash was almost too quick for me to register, but I was sure it was a picture of kids' faces, blank and lifeless, their eyes wide and empty. Then, the game went silent, the screen now devoid of color, only a dim light flickering like a dying star in the shape of game over. "Let's try again," said Claudia, but her voice was off, a near whisper devoid of the enthusiasm that had marked her demeanor before. She pressed the start button, and the game rebooted, but this time it didn't just reset. The machine began to tremble, the vibrations sending a jolt of fear up my spine. The flickering lights cast odd shadows that danced grotesquely around the arcade, but then silence enveloped the room once more. Claudia turned, but something was different in her eyes. Instead of excitement, a glazed lack of recognition settled there. "It wants us," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "What? Who wants us?" I whispered back, dread pooling in the pit of my stomach. I looked toward the exit, its glow barely visible amidst the dark. Figures moved through the arcade, like the kids had ceased to exist and became shadows, slipping between the machines that towered like sinister sentinels. But Claudia stood still, her fingers twitching toward the buttons of the machine. With a knot of fear tightening in my chest, I grabbed her arm. "We've got to go. Now." I tugged, breaking Claudia's hold on the arcade machine. She screamed, a sound that cut through the swirling noise like a knife. "No, you can't leave. It won't let you," she shouted, pulling her arm free and attempting to grab me with her other arm, but my legs propelled me forward. The arcade was now ominous as I sprinted through, sheets of darkness creeping into the light of the exit as I got nearer, though I felt something pursuing me. We just ran. The laughter of children merged with a cacophony of desperate wails that grew louder. It was as if the very walls were alive, pulsating with the unsung cries of past children, urging me to stay. Ben and I burst through the exit into the cool night air. It was like bursting out from a thick bubble of sludge. Even the air felt lighter. We stopped to catch our breath. The recent dimming of the lights had given way to the neon facade of the genie's lamp. The sinister feeling of dread was gone, and it seemed like all the kids had suddenly come back into existence within the arcade. Then it hit me. Where was Claudia? In that moment, I felt hollow, knowing that I couldn't just leave her. I turned back to look inside. The arcade was alive with color and life again, but there was a section of stillness between the machines. I saw her standing there, her back to me as the screen pulsed violently. In that split second, a shadow crawled up from beneath the machine beside her, a shadow that seemed to devour light. It enveloped her, until she was gone, and so was the shadow. The collector arcade machine looked dormant again. We didn't wait. We grabbed our bikes and pedaled as fast as we could away, heart racing, until we were far enough from the haunted glow of the genie's lamp and could see our own front door. The eerie atmosphere hung in the air, like it had followed us, along with the regret of the game we should never have played. Of course, we told our parents and the police, but nobody ever believed us. They just stuck to what therapists were saying. We subconsciously created a story to mask the trauma of us witnessing our best friend being abducted. Maybe they're right. When we returned to the arcade to show them, it was like the machine never existed, but it will never not feel real to me. I remember it so vividly it has to be true. Ben refuses to speak about that day now, but I know the whisper of the collector still haunts him like it haunts me, intertwining itself into the very fabric of my mind, a reminder that an urban legend always has that chance to be true, whether believed or not. To this day, children are still missing, last seen at the genie's lamp. It closed down after a couple of years. People were spreading rumors, blaming the owner of the place for the disappearances. It is still there now, though, abandoned. Some people say, in that accursed place, near the fading neon lights, you can feel their spirits longing for escape, trapped forever in a game where the prize is nothing but oblivion.
So we've closed the jar again. Join us next time and subscribe for more, if you dare.